hearing is part of a broader oversight effort by the committee to examine U.S. policy options to address the twin threats presented by Iran and Syria. On October 11, 2011, the United States approach to the Iranian regime should have gone a major change. On that day, it was revealed that the Iranian regime was actively planning on an attack on a foreign diplomat in the United States and was willing and able to kill and maim innocent Americans in the process. If the regime feels secure enough in planning a U.S.-based attack now, imagine how much more blatant its aggression will be if it had nuclear weapons. Instead of begging for help, we need a realistic policy that reflects the urgency and the multifaceted nature of the Iranian threat. For U.S. and global security, these regimes must be made to understand that the cost of their aggressive actions will be too great for them to bear, and that they must immediately abandon their nuclear weapons program, their unconventional weapons and ballistic missile development, and support for violent extremists, and the repression of their own people. The time is now.
In 1979, 444 Americans were held hostage, or rather 52 Americans were held hostage for 444 days by the Iranian tyrants. The United States, in my opinion, has held the MEK political hostage for 450 days for its failure to abide by a court order, and the court saying 15 months ago that the MEK was denied due process by our own State Department, and our State Department has failed to make up its mind one way or other whether the MEK should be delisted or stay on the list. I think that's not a good situation for the United States State Department to be in, that it should make a decision. And sanctions historically have never worked. It just prolongs the inevitable, whatever that may be. My question, Secretary Sherman, is, does the United States have a policy that supports a regime change in Iran through the people of Iran?
The administration has a policy to eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons program and ambitions, to stop its international terrorism, to stop its destabilization.
Excuse me, Secretary Sherman, I only have 5 minutes,
yes,
and I don't want you to talk so much that I don't get an answer.
Yes,
does the United States government have a policy that we support a regime change by the people of Iran in their country?
And in this situation in Syria is when people themselves make choices about what they want for their future, the international community should support people in that effort. But it's up to the people of Iran.
But do we support the regime change? If the people of Iran want a regime change, do we support it? Would we support it?
I think we would support the people of Iran having the same freedoms that all of the rest of us have.
So I'm sorry, is that just a yes or a no, or you don't know?
That is exactly what I said, Congressman, which is we support the aspirations of the Iranian people.
I think one way that we can help a regime change, and I do believe that is the greatest hope for peace, is that there is a regime change and the little fella from the desert, Ahmadinejad, be replaced by his own people. That's the most secure and best way for world peace, is to replace him through the people. But one way we can do that is show support by making up our mind on whether the MEK should stay on the Foreign Terrorist Organization list or not. We just need to fish or cut bait on that issue. And I think that, of course, that we should make the decision that they should be delisted and let the people of Iran, in their own way, change the regime as occurred in the Arab Spring and some other countries. When is Iran going to have nuclear weapons, Secretary Sherman? When do you believe they'll have them?
There is a lot of discussion about what that timing might be, and it is certainly not a good sign that they have declared that they have moved to 20% enrichment, and they have moved some of their centrifuge capabilities to what was a previously covert center at Guam. But I couldn't give you today in this setting an assessment, but would be glad to have a separate briefing to get the intelligence community's best estimate of that.
It appears to me that no matter what we have done and what the international community has done, Iran is still determined to have nuclear weapons. another example that sanctions have not been successful. The latest situation with the Iran government, in my opinion, working with who they thought were Zeta operatives in Mexico to commit crimes in the United States. Is there any further policy of the United States other than to isolate Iran, whatever that means? Is there further plans with the United States as far as the policy goes?
The President said yesterday, Congressman, that he wants to ensure that we have the strongest response towards this latest horrific act by Iran. We are working assiduously to make real that commitment that he stated yesterday, and we will be doing everything we can and have been from the President on down to try to move in that direction. Some of those things have been discussed here today, but there are others in consideration. And as the President has also said, every option in circumstances like this always remain under consideration. Thank you.
First of all, for the record, I am appalled that it takes the attempted murder of a Saudi ambassador for the U.S. to do something serious, serious soul-searching about what further actions we can take to try to rein in the mullah regime's dictatorship and repression and threat to other people and other regimes and other governments in that region. Iran has murdered hundreds of our own military personnel by providing Shiite militias in Iraq with high-powered IEDs over the years. This has been going on for years. And I don't mean to downplay this assassination attempt and how important it is, but we should have responded with a very tough reaction the minute we found out that Iran was providing these weapons to people who are killing American soldiers. But we just sort of let it off, just shrugged it off. You know, we have a certain level of sanctions that obviously they can live with because they've been living with it. Then we have, you know, like these folks here with the MEK. I mean, clearly the MEK has been labeled a terrorist organization because they oppose the mullah regime. And we're doing that trying to curry favor with the mullah regime. And how much does it take before we quit trying to curry favor with them by treating people who oppose them as if they're criminals? It's the mullah regime who are the terrorists, not the MEK. The MEK wants to establish a democracy there. I'm not saying I agree with everything they stand for, but by designating them terrorists, we're giving the mullahs the idea that we're weak. How do we expect to get anywhere in this world when we treat our friends who believe in democracy as if they are enemies, and our enemies as if they're our friends? Seems to me that's what's going on here. Just look, we are at a point where we have a representative of our government who can't even say we believe in regime change, with a mullah dictatorship that's building nuclear weapons and undermining governments throughout that region, and now is engaged in hiring an assassin to commit an act of assassination and a bomb explosion here in our nation's capital. We don't even have a government, our government, suggesting that that government shouldn't, there should be a new regime there. Of course that's seen as weakness. We are seen as weaklings, not as, so what if we side emotionally with the people of Syria? We couldn't even, we had a tepid, this administration had a tepid response to the brutal and murderous repression of the Iranian people when they went into the streets to protest the stolen election. A stolen election means you have a group of people who are superimposing power over others illegitimately. This is not a legitimate government, and we can't even say we believe in regime change. I can see why the mullahs now think we're so weak that they can go into conspiracies to set off bombs in our nation's capital. Look, All of these years, we've known what the mullahs are all about. They have expressed their hatred towards the West and towards the United States, their commitment towards and utilizing brutality and murder to achieve their ends, and yet we can't even move, we can't take them off the terrorist list for just their opposition, and much less can we support all of the ethnic groups and the young Persians in Iran who are struggling and risking their lives against the mullahs. We haven't provided any material support, we haven't provided any weapons, we haven't provided any way that they can actually impact the mullahs' dictatorship and control in Iran. Shame on us. Our founding fathers fought, and generation after generation of Americans have fought for freedom. We're not even willing to take the risk of saying there should be a regime change in Iran. Shame on us.
A couple of opening comments. I agree with Mr. Rohrabacher that this attack demonstrates that Iran perceives us as weak, and not without good reason. I'll point out that we've got a number of people in the audience with yellow T-shirts that remind us that 450 days ago, a court declared that the State Department should carry out the law. Since they don't carry out the other laws we pass about Iran, I want to focus on the airplanes that Iran Air and Mohan Air acquired in the 1970s. These have General Electric engines. The engines need repair and are unsafe. A number of our colleagues joined with me in a letter saying that the planes should be grounded until Iran changes its policy and that we should not repair them. These supposedly civilian planes, or at least other supposedly civilian planes owned by Mohan Air and owned by Air Iran, are used to take weapons and thugs from Iran to Syria to kill the Syrian people. Now, I would say that's contributing to the unsafety of civilians. And yet the State Department, in a desire to once again, eviscerate our sanctions, is supportive of this license. The idea that it's fine for thousands of Syrians to die at the hands of Iranian weapons and Iranian thugs, that's okay, but we got to make sure that the planes that the thugs use are safe. Now let me turn to another issue. Under CISADA, we directed the State Department to sanction those firms that give Iran the technology to suppress the Internet. And there is a Chinese company that we have great concerns is just about to do that, recently having sold Iran Internet monitoring equipment. The State Department, consistent with its policy under the Iran Sanctions Act, has a policy of just ignoring the law and has refused to identify any item of equipment that would trigger this provision of CISADA. I know it's taking you 450 days to deal with the court decision, and this is less time than that. Any chance that the State Department will, since this committee passed, at least at the committee level, a provision directing you to do so, identify those items of equipment that are sanctionable under CISADA dealing with Internet suppression?
I will come back to you with further information on that.
Any chance you'll get it done within 450 days?
I understand your concern. And
any chance you'll get it done during the current administration?
I understand, sir.
Given the fact that Iran is engaged in an active war against the United States, you would think that the State Department could act a little bit more quickly. Finally, is there any chance that you're going to sanction any multinational corporation under the Iran Sanctions Act for investment in the Iranian oil sector, except for those companies owned by Iran themselves?
There have been, in fact, a number of sanctions. If I may let Undersecretary Cohn speak to this issue.
Call to action to compel those regimes now to end their pursuit of nuclear weapons, chemical and biological weapons, advanced missile programs, their state sponsorship of global terrorism, and their gross violations of the basic human rights of its citizens. And the time is now, we all agree, if we are to shut these regimes, the time is now.